George and Rebecca Barnes were two rarely recognized historical figures who played a big role in the Underground Railroad here in Syracuse.
George and Rebecca Barnes were abolitionists who settled in the Italianate-style homes at what is now 930 James Street in 1853.
George Barnes was born in Kent, England in 1827.
George came to Syracuse in 1844, studied law, and married Rebecca Hermanes, the orphan niece of John Wilkinson.
John Wilkinson, Charles B. Sedgwick, and George Barnes were all close friends, who later joined the abolitionist movement together.
Also, they formed a core group of the Underground Railroad supporters. In addition, George Barnes was very much against slavery.
In other words, he didn't like the prejudices or stereotypings we still see today.
To prove this, George supported those who were arrested for violating the fugitive slave law for helping in the J Rescue.
George signed bail money of $2,000 for 3 Caucasian men.
Also provided bail money of $4,000 for an African-American teacher named William Thompson.
It isn't shocking how an African-American bail was double that of a Caucasian man's bail.
For many years, George and Rebecca continued their abolitionist work.
The abolitionist couples of the Barnes, Sedgwicks, and the Wilkinsons took lead in action in holding conventions and meetings at the Barnes home for anti-slavery movements. In March 1854, George Barnes signed a call for a meeting to support the rescue of a freedom seeker in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In July of 1854, he was one of the several hundred men to do so. He issued a call for a convention to appoint local delegates to a statewide convention, opposed to the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854.
In April 1854, he was one of the directors of a newly formed city anti-slavery society. The group worked hard for a change, but the problem with slavery was some states or communities were pro-slavery and some were anti-slavery. They were very brave to take action on what was right.
Although their actions were risky, they accomplished a lot, getting slaves to Canada, providing bail money for abolitionists that were jailed, and protesting against race-biased laws.
They will fight for the rights of others.
It put a lot of stress on the slaves. Fugitives experienced stress over how they might get caught by slave catchers, going to homes of people they didn't know, having to put their trust in a stranger, and having to be ready to head north to freedom.
The Barnes were stressed too. They had to make sure slaves got to Canada.
Risking wealth, freedom, and family, but their stress is what motivated them to continue helping the slaves get out of that situation.
In this road, equality has been fought for in many ways. Slavery has been fought against, and is still being fought for today.
Abolitionists who fought against slavery were Samuel May, George Barnes and Rebecca Barnes, Harriet Tubman, and Jermaine Wesley Logan.
Another example of how equality has been fought for is how Martin Luther King Jr. protested against segregation and racism.
Women's rights were fought for by Susan B. Anthony, as she led a women's rights conference in Seneca Falls, New York. These are examples of leaders.
In conclusion, the Barnes in their action may not be recognized, but they played a big role in the Underground Railroad.
They helped bring the Trail of Freedom to life.
How can you spread the message of George and Rebecca Barnes?
What is the importance of George and Rebecca Barnes? Written, produced, and directed by
Ketaydra White
and Yanira Johnson.